Alrighty, we're back to continue our analysis of the TriMet sock puppet meeting, and they're discussing the process for the budget. Of course, they're going to do a better job, including people in the future. We've heard all this before. Okay, there's nothing new here. As I said in many videos, don't listen to what they say, just watch what they do.
I would point out, Mr. General Manager, that I think that third item I mentioned in terms of the outreach services, that's one I hope that maybe we can have a dialogue about how we might be able to use those in our budget process next year to make sure some of those interest groups that these folks are specifically tied to can have more feeling like there's more opportunities for participation in our budget.
Absolutely, and indeed that's the reason for those contracts, is
right,
to make sure that we do a better job of connecting communities throughout the region.
Thank you. All right, then let's move on to our resolutions. The first resolution is Resolution 17-05-42, which is adopting the fiscal year 2017-2018 annual budget and appropriating funds. Mr. General Manager.
Mr. Board President, members of the board, with me is Dee Brookshire, our Chief Financial Officer, for any hard questions, who I can volley her way. But I would just note that the budget is actually bringing together a number of processes that that run throughout the whole year. Recall that we start with public outreach and discussion about our service plans. And that is even backstopped by our service enhancement planning effort, which has a great citizen involvement effort associated with it too. So there is a process that really looks at the service elements and the improvements to service that are called for, and we have a very broad outreach program associated with that. And then there is the sort of the business side of the budget as well. And on the business side of the budget, we began with the board, and this actually started, I believe, in October of last year, where we asked you to begin to think about the themes that the budget needed to respond to. And you actually adopted and approved those late in 2016. Those themes, I should note, are safety, implementing the service enhancement plans, maintaining and preserving the system, improving system reliability, building ridership through quality service and innovation, and advancing regional corridor projects. I do believe this budget is responsive to those same themes in many different ways. But I'd also just note, in terms of the process, what happens then is that we actually then take those themes, send them out to our departments. We get budget proposals back. We sift through those, and we actually then provide a draft budget for you to review, and we did that in mid-March this year, and it's also put out to the public at the same time for comment and discussion. I'd also note that we have the process that you went through this year with the Tax Supervising and Conservation Commission, public hearing associated with that. That meeting was held on April 24th. And again, TSCC certified the budget, and I think, as usual, described it as a clear and an easy to understand document from a technical standpoint.
Let me tell you something. I actually have read the TriMet budget, and maybe it's easy to understand from a technical standpoint, but it's completely impossible to understand from a consumer standpoint. I went through it. I tried my best to go through it, and I made it like 3/4 of the way, and I've got stuff on my blog about it, but it's completely incomprehensible. And, nobody can understand the TriMet budget. And I mean, this is all your typical, bullshit, bureaucratic, technocratic, double speak. Yes, we had public. Yes, we did everything right. Yes, the public. Yes, yes. And it's just nonsense.
It is in compliance with all Oregon and important rules and regulations. So that brings the budget before you for consideration and adoption. Just to summarize the budget, the big line numbers are day-to-day operations, about $534.7 million. There's another payment that the federal government owes us on the orange line that adds another $100 million. That's really just paying back TriMet for money borrowed in the past.
That right there is the scam of public transportation, by the way, because they went out and took $100 million loan at interest, okay, which is part of the scam. This is all part of when they do these tax increases, it's all for the banks, okay? People don't get the connections here. But they were awarded money, but they didn't give them the money. So what did TriMet do? They went out and borrowed the money. This kind of thing is an abomination, really, that they do this. Okay, and it ends up costing hundreds of millions and it comes billions in interest payments on the backs of the taxpayers here when they build this shit. And people don't understand what's really happening when you pass these tax increase stuff. You're handing over this huge amount of revenue stream to these people that have no business handling the revenue stream. Nobody gets it because it's completely hidden from your view, and nobody watches me, so they're not going to find out from me, and they're going to continue to be conned over and over and over.
Capital and operating projects total $203 million. A lot of that is grant-related funding. There's a pass-through that we often do with other agencies of about $6.6 million, and then fund balance and contingency at about $355 million. So it's about a 1 point.
Do you understand what McFarland's doing here? This is another thing that people don't understand. He's putting aside $300 million. That's almost the entire amount of money for the operations. The operations are $500 million. You heard him say it. But he's putting aside $300 million into his own little contingency fund. Okay, that's a huge amount of money that he is removing from services so that he can have his contingency, which is pretty much whatever he wants to spend it on. And that's not an exaggeration.
$2 billion total bottom line, but important to understand those pieces because not all of those numbers are continuing, and many of those numbers will change every year as the situation comes up.
All right, you heard what he said. He said $2 billion. That's how much money McFarland is giving out. This $2 billion is going through TriMet. And if $2 billion is coming in, $2 billion is going out. Every time there's a contract, every time you fund that, if you're going to spend, like in Seattle, they're going to pay $54 billion. Taxpayers are going to pony up $54 billion. And that means somebody's going to get $54 billion. And it's the ones that are getting the $54 billion. Those people are directing the political discussions to make sure they get that money. It really is that simple, and it's really that big of a con. I wish Americans could wake up, but I guess it's not ever going to be possible.
Related to safety service, the theme of safety, we have a number of grade crossing improvements that are capital improvements in the budget this year. We also have improvements to the CCTV system, and we have a number of training efforts underway, one of which Doug mentioned related to rail operator training and increased operator training overall. Related to service, we will be expanding bus service hours by 3.42% in 2018. You might note that the goal of the Regional Transportation Plan is that we expand service at about 2.1 a year. So we're overperforming on that goal, which is a good thing. And that is, again, because of your support of that payroll tax increase that is ramping up over a 10-year period. So that includes the increment. We actually have approximately $5 million annualized in new service in this budget. And we believe that we're on the course of continuing.
Let's just put that into a little context. $5 million in service enhancements per year versus, when he gives out executive raises, it's $1 million, $1.5 million a year. So you keep it in context, okay? When all the executives get raises, it's $1.5 million a year. And so the service enhancement is $5 million a year.
To grow that service year after year as the new payroll tax revenues fall into place. And indeed, there's also, as I think Doug also mentioned, a number of initiatives related to reliability, certainly training, improvements to the system, the kinds of things that we did at Morrison Yamhill. All of those things will contribute to reliability overall. We also add time to bus schedules so they can be more predictable, given the fact that congestion is beginning to congeal our roadway network a bit more, making it harder for our operators to hit their schedules. And so we need to adjust for that as well. A number of capital improvements are included in the budget. They, of course, include completing the electronic fare system with its automatic best fare capping system associated with it. Some of the safety improvements I noted, the construction of our Powell lift facility, as well as our beginning the construction or reconstruction of our Powell bus maintenance facility.
Okay, let's bring to the bring it out that all of this list that he's reciting here, this list of his, all of this was decided by him and his staff. This is what we've decided we're going to spend money on this year. There was no public input into that. Okay, let's get that idea out of your head. This was all McFarland and his executive cronies.
We are fixing and replacing Blue Line station elevators. We have a Blue Line station rehabilitation project, which is funding annually as we can afford the rehabilitation of the lines of the stations really from Hollywood East. And we do include in the budget the partnership with Prosper Portland for a new dispatch and precinct facility for our police in the Lloyd District, about 2,000 feet from the current facility.
Yeah, $12 million of TriMet funds for this police facility.
I'd also note that with FTA support, we will be improving some safety provisions around the Orange Line, 8th, 11th, and 12th, and helping the UP Railroad expedite their trains through that area as well, improving the safety of those crossings and the efficiency of those crossings. So those are all included in the capital program, as well as some of the topics that we'll touch on later in the agenda, including some of the improvements of track and lift joints on the steel bridge and the switches and the signal performance at either end of the steel bridge. So those are major improvements that will be part of the work ahead. As you know, the budget was developed in alignment with the strategic financial plans that the board has adopted. Particularly Board Members Stovall and Prosser put a lot of time and energy into that, and I wanted to just sort of, we have in the past given you a full report on the alignment of those policies with the budget alignment with those policies. Just to emphasize that our debt service is well below the 6% threshold that you've set, and our one-time only revenues are cleanly separated from our continuing revenues. We've enhanced our pension funding as called for in that plan, and we are now at a 72% rate for our union funding plan, 86% for the non-union. And again, consistent with the funding.
Yeah, I've always found that interesting that the non-union plan has 86% funding and the union plan has 74% funding. Yeah, there wouldn't be an actual objective example of management self-interest, would it? Oh no, it's just purely coincidence that the management pension fund is more fully funded than the union.
Pension funding policies the board adopted as part of that plan. With that, Dee is willing, if you're willing, to actually walk through the changes between the proposed and the adopted budget. Or any discussion that you may wish to have at this point in time.
And those changes are in our packet, right?
Correct, and those are the ones that the Finance and Audit Committee reviewed this morning.
Right. So what's the pleasure of the board? Would you like her to walk through those changes so we have those on the record too, or are we feeling comfortable? You'd like to? Okay.
Yes, I'd like to. Okay. We'll start with the resource budget changes. The resources and the requirements both all balance changes totaling $48.9 million from the approved budget to the adopted budget. We increased the beginning fund balance of restricted bond proceeds and other restricted due to the e-fair project carryover. This wasn't unexpected. It's an $11.7 million increase in resources. Increased debt service beginning fund balance for 2017 revenue bond interest payment of $1.8 million. This is related to a subsequent resolution for a future bonding issue. Increased the unrestricted beginning fund balance as a result of the updated projections for fiscal 2017 capital and operating project carryover of $8.4 million. We decreased the advertising budget to reflect current projections by $51,000. We increased accessible transportation contract to reflect current projections of $588,000. We decreased other federal, state, and local operating grants for revised estimates of $188,970. Increased our CIP resources by $23.8 million for Milwaukee Light Rail project and remaining $2.8 million due to carryover changes. That was due to a late action by FTA to approve some additional project work on PMLR. So the final one is a decreased pass-through resource to reflect current projections of $64,000. Moving to the requirement budget changes, or the changes to the expenditure side of the budget, we increased funds to the M&S for utility changes and card reader upgrades, $263,664. We increased funds to reflect our current OPEB and pension UAAL costs by $4,422. We increased debt service for 2017 revenue bond interest payment change and capitalized leases, $1.9 million. We increased the CIP by $25.7 million due to the timing of operating and capital improvement program expenses, rollover of fiscal year 2017 projects to fiscal year 2018 by $25.6 million, decreased pass-through requirements to reflect current projections by $64,000. We increased our contingency to reflect 3% of all the other changes, which came to $67,033. We increased restricted bond proceeds and other restricted ending fund balances due to reflect remaining bond funds of $13.5 million. We decreased restricted funds for debt service by $9.6 million, and we increased unrestricted ending fund balance by $17.1 million due to a change in the project resources due to the carryover. Any questions on?
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Oh, yeah, I understood what she was talking about. I'm sure that board member understood. It's a complete, you might as well be speaking a foreign language. Who knows what you're talking about? I mean, come on, man. Jeez.
On any of that?
Any questions on any other parts of the budget? Or
The board member had no questions. Dead silence because nobody knows what to say. I mean...
certainly happy to respond.
I don't see any other questions right at the moment. Do we want to get a motion on the table and then have a discussion of the budget? Yeah. Is there a motion then to approve Resolution 17-05-42?
So move.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion on the budget. Again, we heard a lot of testimony this morning. I'd like to maybe get some things on the record there, but any other comments? Or yes.
First, I want to thank staff for all their hard work, having built public.
You know, one thing about watching these consistently is you really can see the dynamic, and you can read it. And here comes Prosser with his standard thanks to the great staff of Trimet. This is his standard gig. Prosser's always the one that yields the great congratulations and adulations to the great Trimet staff for their wonderful work.
Sector budgets for my entire career. I know how difficult it is and how time-consuming it is. The work of our finance folks, but also of our operating divisions, pulling the information together. It is a massive amount of work, and I really appreciate the work that you guys do, so thank you. I do want to say one thing, and Dr. Bethel mentioned in his comments something that I think is very important, and that is that if we see things that we don't understand, it's really important that we talk to each other to get clear information. Doesn't mean we're going to end up necessarily agreeing, but at least we're all working off the same information. I want to say that there are no funds in this budget for a jail. None. TriMet is not authorized to build or operate a jail.
Oh, Prosser, yeah, no, right. It's not a jail, it's a community center. Right, it's a community center with interrogation rooms. God.
In this state, the state maintains the prisons. Those are for long-term incarceration of serious offenses. The counties operate the jails. So over there at the Justice Center, the top floors, that's where the jail is. Police offices in smaller cities and in Portland have the precincts have holding cells. And those are cells for temporary holding of people prior to booking. And it's to allow the officer to sit down and write the report so that they can take it with the person over to central booking, which in this case is in the Justice Center. The holding cells must be operated according to federal rules and regulations. One of those is that nobody can be put in a holding cell for longer than 24 hours. I talked with Harry Supporter this morning and asked how long people are typically put in the existing holding cells, because the facility we are replacing has 2 holding cells. The facility we will build will have 2 holding cells. And Harry told me that with his observation, people are in there for maybe an hour. Could be a little longer, a little less.
Look, he's a sock puppet. He has to defend McFarlane, and he has to defend all the other sock puppets. And he doesn't get it. Yeah, okay, it's not technically a jail. It's a goddamn place where they put somebody behind bars, okay? You're detained. There's a goddamn interrogation room, okay? Like Guantanamo. But it's not a jail because they're not there more than 24 hours. Look, the issue was always TriMet transportation funds funding the police state in general. What the hell is TriMet funding anything to do with the police? Why don't they just drive them to booking? Why don't they use the Portland facilities? What does the Portland police take their people? Well, you're in Portland, right? If you're arresting somebody in Portland, you're in Portland. So you take them to the Portland facility. But why is TriMet involved in this at all is the question. Then they shouldn't be.
So that is far different than a jail. And, I think all of this discussion, people have gotten upset, and I really understand why.
You don't understand why, Prof. You don't have the slightest clue why people are upset. You think it's okay. You're a career technocrat who's used to manipulating public opinion, and that's what you're doing here. You're attempting to manipulate public opinion with falsities, okay? It's not a jail because they're not there more than... Take your goddamn minutia out of here because, you're a liar, all right? You're lying right now, Prosser. You're lying with a bold face.
TriMet is trying to up enforcement, create more police. Our system is growing and expanding, and that by itself will create the need for more police officers over time. The existing facility is undersized, cramped, has severe maintenance problems, and is not owned by TriMet. It's leased from the city of Portland. And it doesn't make a lot of sense for TriMet to invest capital money in that facility, which cannot be any larger than it is, to fix the maintenance problems.
See, he's just going along the paradigm that somehow TriMet should be involved with the police state like this. I don't see this. Why don't the municipalities provide TriMet police services like they do every other business or entity within their jurisdiction? All right, that's what's supposed to do that. Why is TriMet involved in this at all? That's what people want to know. TriMet doesn't need to be involved with this. But instead, you're taking transportation funds and you're using them to supplant the police state. And we know what you're doing, and no matter how you try to paint it, we know you're wrong.
And so we are going to be building a new precinct in the Rose Quarter. It will be larger. There will be more room for officers as we grow over time. We're not going to all of a sudden have a military force come in and start riding our buses. It will have 2 holding cells. People will be held there very short term while paperwork is being processed. I've also heard a lot of concern that there will be interrogation rooms. The interrogation room is a conference room.
So he's denying that it's even an interrogation. He's saying it's a conference room. Now, that's the first time I've heard anybody try to put that argument forward. Even the media, the mainstream media, which is totally pro-government, has talked about these kind of interrogation rooms. So now he's trying to say that it's just a conference room? Oh man, oh man. So why are you building anything then? Okay, why don't you just have this shit down at Portland Police Headquarters?
With a table and chairs. A little more secure. My experience at the city of Tigard, which also has holding cells, which also has interrogation room, which is also a conference room. There are differences between a regular conference room and an interrogation room, in Tigard at least, was it had 2 separate entrances. It does have video and sound recording capabilities in it. But that's really it. So, unfortunately, I think we've had a lot of concern and people are upset. And, you know, when the concern first occurred to folks, if they would talk to staff to TriMet and make sure that we're working off the same information. You know, with that in mind, I will be supporting this because I think it is a needed facility. I think this is a good budget, and so I will intend on voting aye.
Thank you.
I'll just make a quick statement. I appreciate Director Prosser's clarifying the record. I think he's laid out the reality of this particular item in the budget that has become an issue of concern. It's not a jail. It's a needed facility that will just continue a role that TriMet has played. There isn't a plan right now to increase the transit police force, for example. In my view, this budget advances the principles that TriMet displays in all of its operations, and those are equity, excellent service to all customers, and safety of all customers and employees. TriMet is also a good steward of public resources, and I do support the budget.